With me today, District Attorney David O'Leary, who's going to be assisting with this news conference. How we're going to be conducting this news conference is I have a statement I'd like to begin with that will lay out the facts as we've learned them since this incident was called in to us last night. After we read the statement, we'll be able to answer some of your questions today. It's still an ongoing investigation, a lot of details yet to be worked out. So there might be questions that we won't be able to answer at this point, but District Attorney O'Leary and I will do our best to give you some answers today. All right? So, this is basically an update of what's occurred so far. As my earlier news release stated, last night on Wednesday, October 25th, 2017, at approximately 8:22 p.m., the Rock County Communications Center received a 911 call reporting a disturbance at 373 Elm Street in the city of Milton. The first caller, a victim whom I will not identify tonight, stated that her husband had pointed a gun at her inside of their home and now shots had been fired outside of the home. The victim identified her husband, Zachary J. Barrett, B-A-R-R-E-T-T, age 30, who also resides in the home with her and her 5 children. While officers from Milton Police Department and the Rock County Sheriff's Office responded, additional witnesses from the neighborhood reported that there was a man on scene with a gun, and those witnesses reported the sounds of gunshots. When officers arrived on the scene, they found Barrett lying on the ground in the driveway of the residence with a single gunshot wound to his head. A 21-year-old male, identified as Jason P. Cravinger, that is spelled K-R-A-A-Y-V-A-N-G-E-R, was also in the driveway. Cravinger appeared to be trying to render first aid to Barrett. Cravinger also stated to the officers something to the effect of, quote, "He gave me no choice, I had to do it," end quote. Cravinger was handcuffed without incident, detained in a City of Milton squad car. Medical treatment was immediately provided to Barrett by Milton and Milton Township Fire and EMS, the Janesville Fire Department paramedics, and Dr. J. McNeil from Mercy Hospital's MD1 program. Barrett was transported to Mercy Hospital in Janesville and later transferred to UW Hospital by MedFlight. He currently is there in critical condition. Through interviews with Cravinger, Barrett's wife, and other witnesses, we've been able to construct the following timeline of events leading up to the shooting. Cravinger and Barrett are friends, and Cravinger has recently been living at the residence while assisting Barrett with some remodeling projects. While at the residence last night, an argument began between Barrett and his wife. That argument continued on into a bedroom. Barrett's wife, let me back up. Cravinger stated that Barrett's wife left the bedroom alone while Barrett stayed in the bedroom. Barrett's wife then told Cravinger that Barrett had put a pillow against her head and then held a pistol against her head, threatening her. Cravinger told Barrett's wife to go to a separate upstairs apartment in the house with her children to get away from Barrett. Barrett's wife was able to get safely upstairs with the children. Cravinger also then went upstairs to talk to Barrett's wife and told her that she needed to get her and the kids out of there. She told Cravinger that she did not have keys for a vehicle. Cravinger told her he would go downstairs and get the keys. When Cravinger arrived downstairs, he discovered that Barrett had put on a bullet-resistant vest with a rifle-rated plate. On the chest of the vest was a holster containing a 9mm pistol. Barrett had also armed himself with an AR-15 .223 caliber rifle. Barrett told Cravinger that he knew his wife had called 911 by that point, so he was getting ready for the cops to arrive. Cravinger continued talking with Barrett as the two of them left the downstairs apartment and went out into the driveway next to the home. Cravinger reports that Barrett began pointing the AR-15 rifle at Cravinger and telling him to get out of there. Initially, Barrett would raise the rifle and Cravinger would knock it away with his hands. This happened a number of times, and the confrontation continued to get more intense. Eventually, Barrett raised the rifle and pointed it directly at Cravenger's face. Believing that he was about to be shot, Cravenger reached for the 9mm pistol in the holster on Barrett's chest. He removed the 9mm pistol from that holster and shot Barrett one time in the head. Barrett immediately fell to the ground. The 911 calls began and officers arrived a short time later. The AR-15 rifle and the 9mm pistol were found in the driveway when officers arrived. One spent 9mm casing was found in the driveway as well. In addition to these two weapons, two smaller pistols were discovered in cargo pockets in Barrett's pants. He was also wearing a belt containing a number of AR-15 magazines and additional loaded magazines for the pistols. The physical evidence located at the scene is consistent with Cravenger's version of the shooting, that he acted in self-defense. There are no known witnesses to the confrontation in the driveway or the actual shooting itself. At this time, Barrett is incapable of providing us a statement, and it is unknown if or when he will be able to. Based upon the current state of the investigation, the state would not be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Cravenger did not act lawfully in self-defense. He has been released from the Rock County Jail this afternoon. However, the investigation continues. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of those impacted by this incident. If anyone in our community has any information on this incident, I ask that they call the Milton Police Department through the Rock County 911 Communications Center at 608-757-2244, or call Crime Stoppers at 608-756-3636. Citizens can also download the free P3 Tips app at the Apple Store or Google Play Store to submit crime tips anonymously. The Milton Police Department is extremely grateful for the tremendous support provided by the Rock County Sheriff's Office. We are also grateful for the support provided by the Milton and Milton Township Fire Department, Mercy Hospital MD1, the Janesville Fire Department, the Rock County Communications Center, and the City of Milton Department of Public Works. I am also extremely proud of the work my staff has done over the last 18 hours. We are now prepared to take your questions. I would ask to keep some decorum that you raise your hand, and I'll call on you individually. As this remains a very active and ongoing investigation, there may be questions we are currently not able to answer. Go ahead.
Is the wife cooperating?
We have spoken with the wife several times throughout the night, last night and today.
Did she claim self-defense? Or what Jason had said?
She was not a witness to the actual event, and she is understandably devastated with the current condition of her husband.
Did you guys find any more weapons in the home?
We found no weapons in the home. We did find additional ammunition, but no weapons inside.
Okay. Zach Barrett's record, was he allowed to have a gun?
He was not. In a criminal history check that we did on him, he is a convicted felon, and therefore is not technically permitted to possess weapons at this point.
Okay. And what about, I'm sorry, I can't, Cravenger?
Cravenger.
What about his criminal record?
Very minimal, no criminal record that I'm aware of, and only minor contacts with law enforcement beyond criminal acts.
Okay. Neighbors around there had said that they had called the police to come over there a couple of times. Did you guys have a past with this family, with this house?
We were familiar with the house, but I wouldn't say it's a house that we would have, frequent arrests at or things like that.
Okay. If you could explain it, maybe you can help us out, Mr. Leary, the whole probable cause for self-defense, because I know a lot of people, some people are saying, well, if the guy was there and he said that he shot him, why is he not being charged? Why is he not in custody?
By law, the state is required to prove that a person did not act with self-defense. So I was at the scene, I met with the chief, I met with the investigating detectives, and based on all the information we have right now, the state cannot prove that he acted other than in self-defense. So based on that, there's no basis for criminal charges.
So does the investigation continue, or is that?
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do yet. There's this investigation will be ongoing for a bit,
What do you have to find out?
We are still consolidating reports, getting witness statements together. We have additional witnesses we'd like to try to interview. Today we broadened our neighborhood canvas and tried to reach out to some more folks to see if we have any witnesses in the neighborhood. And that's the victim's status himself. Yeah, that's I need to be careful with words like victim and suspect. So Barrett's status remains a question mark that is going to continue into the future, and that will have an influence on the trajectory of things.
Mr. Cravenger is going to be released.
He has been released.
Okay. Do you know when that happened?
I am not.
This afternoon.
You said Barrett's a convicted felon. Are you able to go into his criminal history at all?
We haven't done a deep dive into his criminal history, but what we learned this afternoon is that he was convicted of second offense possession of THC, marijuana, which is a felony. He also has one felony charge of failure to report to jail, and both of those ended in felony convictions.
Can you give an age range of the children that were in the house at the time?
14 was the oldest. I believe the youngest was 1. And so in the various ranges.
Five.
Ranges of
Did you say 5 children?
5 children.
Would it be safe to say that Barrett was waiting for officers to arrive to then engage officers in a gun battle?
It is one of the things we are speculating. We have not been able to confirm that with him. Obviously, we don't know what his mindset was, but from his behavior and the comments that he made to Cravenger, that's something that we are very seriously considering.
So he made comments that waiting for the police to arrive?
She called 911, so I'm getting ready for the cops to arrive.
So they're in the room and she comes out and says he was holding a gun to my head, and she called 911, or did Cravenger call 911?
She called 911. After she escaped the downstairs,
I see, okay.
went to upstairs, secured her place up there, then the shots were fired outside, and she called 911, reported what had happened to her, and that shots had been fired outside the house.
So she didn't call 911 until she heard those shots?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so not when she got out of the room, she just told Cravenger,
Yeah.
hey, this is what's going on.
Correct.
Okay. I see. Anyone else live at the residence? I noticed, I think it's like a duplex.
Yeah, it's a upstairs, downstairs, sort of separate apartments. So the Barrett family, wife and children, and Cravenger were all staying downstairs.
Okay.
And a relative of the wife's is using the apartment upstairs.
As the police chief, are you relieved that the situation resolved itself before officers arrived on scene with what Barrett had, the statements that Barrett had made, and with what he had on and was in possession of?
It's difficult to term that as relief when we have somebody with a bullet in his brain in critical condition. I think the outcome may have very well been much different depending on how the sequence of events went. I don't know that relieved is the right word.
How long has Cravenger been staying with the family? Do we know?
That I don't know.
How long had the family lived there?
I'm not sure on that one.
Did they have, Cravenger and Barrett, did they have a previous relationship before, I think you said Cravenger was just helping to remodel the home? Were they friends before, or was he just working for them? Kind of, what was that relationship?
It's my understanding they've been friends for a long time. In fact, one of the statements that we have heard is best friends.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. How long has the family lived at the location?
I don't know how long the family has lived in there.
Is there any indication of drug use on the part of anyone involved here?
Not that we're aware of. Obviously, there's some testing that takes place, and that's something that's going to be part of that investigation aspect, but I am not aware of it.
Do we know if the husband has had any kind of history of abuse or altercations between himself and his wife?
I don't know.
And you said that all the kids were home at the time?
All the kids were in the residence. That's a level of detail that I haven't quite gotten to yet, but I
Yeah.
believe some were downstairs and some were upstairs.
We were in the neighborhood, there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood. I mean, what's the concern with even someone being that heavily armed in the neighborhood or a shot popping off in a neighborhood like this?
I think that's a concern in any of our neighborhoods. I don't think it's isolated to that particular neighborhood. I think that's, I often talk about issues of interpersonal violence. Can happen in Milton, can happen in any large, small, rural, urban location in this country, and we're no different.
A couple of people out in the neighborhood said today too that they were concerned about this guy getting out. They were concerned about him coming back to their residence. I mean, what can you tell people to maybe put him at ease now that we're going to tell him this guy's out?
Yeah. I think we've laid out the legal case and the reason why he's out. As I said in my news release, my very first one, that this is an issue of interpersonal violence between two people who know one another. And I do not believe there's any danger to the community, even now that he's been released.
When was the last time there was a shooting in the city of Milton?
Oh, I'm not sure I can answer that question. I arrived in Milton as chief of police in July of 2015. We had a stabbing in the fall of 2015 that resulted in homicide charges, but I am not aware of a shooting at least in my tenure here, and there probably has been. But
Do you know how Mr. Barrett acquired those weapons in the vest?
we don't, and that'll be part of that sort of deep dive, long-going investigation.
Do you have any understanding of the nature of the relationship between Mr. Cravinger and Mrs. Barrett?
We don't believe that there's any relationship. We have no evidence of any relationship between
And,
them.
I'm sorry, one other question. I'm sorry, did you tell me what time you released Mr. Cravinger from Rock County?
I'm not aware. It was this afternoon.
Do you know what employment any of the adults, the wife, the husband, Mr. Cravinger, what they were doing for work?
I do not.
This may be jumping here, but if Mr. Barrett goes through, are we looking at charges, felon in possession of firearm charges, or anything of that nature?
We'll make that decision when we see what his status is. But obviously, based on facts that we have, that would be a possibility that he'd be looking at charges for his actions, yes.
So at the moment, right now, we have no charges filed against anyone,
Correct.
and we anticipate charges possibly against the gentleman who is in the hospital. We do not anticipate charges against the individual who's been released.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think charges are possible with both, pending the investigation. Today is not concluding this investigation. This is kind of a as we sit status and update that here is where we sit today, and that status could change with either individual as we continue on.
This is a lot of information in less than 24 hours. How important is it for you guys to be doing these investigations quickly, talking to the right people?
It's crucial, and again, I want to reference the partnerships that we've developed to help us with that. So to work so closely with our law enforcement partners in this region is amazing. And the Sheriff's Department, from the very start, was on scene and said, we will give you whatever you need. And I was trying to do a count of what that meant this morning, and I was well over a dozen officers from the Rock County Sheriff's Department, whether it's detectives, our crime scene people, road guys working at the scene and just helping us secure things. And they were there all night, just right alongside us. And it's not just limited to them. I mentioned all of the other emergency service agencies. I've been on and off the phone all day long with DA O'Leary. We've been working with the medical staff on dealing with what they can tell us, hospital social workers, things like that, to help us through managing this victim, or Mr. Barrett. So, yeah, it's been a long day, and to get here 18 hours later with something that I can give you, I think is pretty good for the complexity that we saw.
We appreciate the level of detail.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Can I ask, how many 911 calls did you receive?
I don't know, but it was several. Yeah, we had a number of calls.
Mr. O'Leary, does Mr. Cravenger have an attorney, and did you have conversations with him?
He does not have an attorney, to my knowledge. I have not had a conversation with him or any attorney. So no, this was purely based on the investigation that the detectives and officers involved and the conversations I had with the chief that, again, the number of shootings and investigations I've done over the years, I would agree with your summary that it's very helpful to have as many facts and details as we do, as early as we do, to help us make those decisions. A lot of times it's simply unknown and we don't know, but all we can proceed on is what we do know. What we do know right now is that the statements that we've received basically support a self-defense claim, and but for that individual's actions, things could have been much worse.
Given your expertise, gentlemen, what can you tell us about how long an investigation like this might take to complete?
Well, it's very difficult to say. Yeah.
It's impossible to answer that. We just do not know.
So right when you got on the scene, he told you that you had no choice?
He told the initial responding officers, as they are approaching and taking in the scene and trying to manage what's happening in front of them, he addressed the officers and said, I don't remember the exact words, and we don't have those written down, but something to the effect of, I had to do it, I had no choice.
Right, so immediately. Was he pretty shook up?
Very much so. I do have printed copies of this for you all, and I can email as well if you prefer.
One more quick question. Is Mr., I only know this from TV, so excuse me, but has he been told not to leave town or to stick around or to stay in touch or anything like that?
That's only on TV.
That's only on TV.
I think you've been watching too many Westerns.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.